My name is Viola, and I have an unusual ability of my body to heat up. I'm like a mutant or a real character in a sci-fi movie. I'll tell you how it all started and how I had to live with it. We were going camping in the mountains that day. We had hoped to spend a couple of days there with my boyfriend, Harry, his friend John, and my friend Nora. By the way, those two couldn't stand each other, but we decided to do some real camping to celebrate the arrival of summer vacation. Harry brought an umbrella with him in his bag, and I asked him why he needed it, to which Harry replied that an umbrella was needed in case it rained. I watched the weather 46 times for those 2 days. It's not going to rain, honey. Relax. Especially this umbrella is so huge. Where did you even get it? I asked, and Harry said he got it as a prize from some contest at the town fair. That's when Nora came over to my house. All she was traveling with was her makeup bag. Nora, we're going to the mountains. What do you need cosmetics for if there's no food and not enough sleeping bags? I asked, and then John got out of the car. He's the one who does everything on reserve. I'll take it from this moron. He always double stocks everything, my friend said. John took offense at her. I'll eat double portions myself and sleep in a double bag so you don't get any. Nora gave him the middle finger. Harry stowed his stuff in his SUV and we drove off. The mood was just right. The road, cold lemonade, friends and a loved one by our sides. A gorgeous sight opened before us. Tall, dense green trees stood in a row, and it felt dizzying to look up into the sky. The clouds were dancing a parade in the light breeze. Suddenly, John was hungry. Let's set up the tent first, and then we can get down to eating, I suggested. Have you heard the phrase, a hungry man is an angry man? I'm not moving until I eat. You're always hungry and angry. It doesn't do you any good not to do anything. Yeah, said the lazy princess to me. Have you ever even done dishes in your life? That's it, guys. We're here to rest, not to fight. I'll make a fire. John, get some sausages. We'll eat quickly and set up the tent then. While the guys were making lunch, Nora and I decided to take some pictures. I was so caught up in the photo shoot that I didn't immediately notice that the wind had suddenly picked up. It became so strong in a couple of seconds that Nora and I barely clasped hands and ran toward the boys. Our fire went out and the sausages were covered in mud. Nora yelled that we should have broken up the tent, but John yelled that it would have been blown away anyway. We ran toward the nearest mountain to hide there, and then it started to rain. Oh no, I was watching the weather, I said, and my boyfriend pulled out that very umbrella. Just like looking in the water, he said, and opened it. I grabbed the umbrella with Nora, and the four of us ran for cover. The wind and rain didn't stop. The boys ran into a small cave to hide. I ran in last, and my umbrella was carried in the opposite direction by the wind. Oh no! I shouted. Then abruptly, thunder struck in the sky, and my eyes were blinded by a flash of bright lightning. It all happened so quickly. The lightning struck my umbrella, and I was electrocuted. I woke up as the guys were slapping my cheeks, and Harry was ineptly doing CPR. John was trying to massage my heart. Guys, if I was dying, this is definitely not how you should save me, I said quietly. They cheered, starting to hug me. I felt lousy, but not for long. The rain passed, and then the sun appeared in the sky again. Harry showed me the umbrella. There was hardly anything left of it. I said I was hungry, and we set up the tent. Nora and John were going to roast sausages over the fire. I don't think it's going to work. The wood and the grass are too wet. You can't get it to light. Then I picked up the wood myself and felt something strange in my body. But after a moment, I folded it flat and immediately lit it. Somebody's hands just didn't grow in the right place, Nora said ominously. We continued our camping, had a good meal, then took a walk, and in the evening we made another fire to eat. Then Nora and I were supposed to share a tent, but Harry said he was worried about me. He lay down with me and our friends together. I didn't sleep well the night before, dreaming of the fire or the heat. In the middle of the night, Harry woke me up. He said my temperature was, "You're on fire. I guess you're sick." In the morning, the guys took me to the hospital in town. There, the doctor said I was okay and then gave me a thermometer to take my temperature. As soon as I put it in, I lay down and John and I got to talking, and then Nora yelled, "Oh my God, it's going to burst!" and pointed to the thermometer. The doctor came running in, grabbed it, and burned himself. The thermometer fell to the floor with a mark of 59 degrees. What? That can't be, the doctor said in shock. The doctors surrounded me immediately. They kicked my friends out of the room, and they gave me a whole interrogation. Then I had a CT scan, MRI, and a bunch of other things. They wanted to take blood for tests, but it froze too quickly in the room at a temperature of 22 degrees. I could not call my folks. They were far away, and I asked them not to say anything. It was strange, but for all that, I felt better than ever. The first few days I was held like an experimental monkey, and John kept trying to break through my supernatural abilities. Well, I did one. I had wet clothes drying quickly on my hands. I was always thirsty too, apparently because the liquid evaporated quickly from my body. And then I got tired. I wrote to my friends that I wanted to get out of there because I felt like a circus animal, and at night we staged an escape. Everything was supposed to go smoothly. I just put on the nurse's uniform that Nora had gotten me, but on the way out, where the car was waiting for me with my friends, I was stopped by a guard. I couldn't answer clearly, and he grabbed my arm and immediately got burned. I ran outside and got in the car. My heart was pounding. I couldn't calm down. Harry's car had leather seats, and after a couple of minutes, a hole formed underneath me, and the interior smelt like soot. On inertia, I grabbed hold of Harry's arm out of fright and burned him. He lost control, and the car went into oncoming traffic. My friends were screaming in fright, and I was starting to burn up even more. To avoid a collision, Harry pulled to the side of the curb, and the car rolled over and hit a tree. We were all alive, but slightly injured, but I could smell gasoline in the cabin and— "Run! Get out of the car!" I yelled. John opened the door, pulled Nora out of there, then they pulled Harry out. I couldn't be touched, and I couldn't get out on my own. My leg was stuck. Harry tried, but I burned him every time. In the back seat, I saw flames. A fire! "Fire! There's a fire!" yelled Nora. "Do something!" Harry tried desperately to open my door, but the fire was already getting to me. Mentally, I said goodbye to them, but at the last minute, he and John managed to pull me outside and get me away from there. Boom! The car caught fire and exploded. The boys had severe burns on their hands. Someone called 911 and rescue workers and an ambulance quickly arrived. "Don't touch me! I'm burning!" I yelled, but they didn't listen to me. They covered me with a blanket, but it didn't burn. They brought me to the hospital, where my temperature was only 36.6. This abnormal phenomenon, as the medic suggested, turned out to be temporary, and also apparently it arose at the moment when I was struck by lightning. In a state of increased stress, a release of adrenaline and cortisol, my unusual skills escalated, but the outbreak went away as soon as I found myself in a similar situation again. A life-threatening situation. That is, when we were involved in the accident. It's been 2 years since then. My body temperature is normal. Harry is the happiest of all because now he can hug me and not be afraid that I will burn him. What about the car? We said it got stolen and don't remember who took it. Good thing the car was insured. Thanks to the fact that the car burned down, there was no sign of me. Nora gave money to the doctor so that they wouldn't call my folks. "Well, somebody had to do it. You homeless people don't have any money," Nora said. "By the way, you and John are getting closer, or so it seems to me." "So do I. You stopped fighting. What affected you two? The accident?" "I think the night we left them alone in the tent." "Shut up, both of you! Why don't you shut up, dumbass?" "Why? They're right, aren't they, love?" "Shut up, John, and get my purse. It's got a lot of heavy makeup in it." Yes, our friends have started dating. At least there is an upside to this camping trip. Well, what about umbrellas? I never picked one up again. Ever. Harry just bought me a raincoat.
My name is Anna. I am 14 years old, and not so long ago, my family and I moved to a very unusual place. Have you ever heard anything about Chernobyl? In short, this is a city in the Ukraine, and it is famous for its accident that occurred at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant 34 years ago. As a result of the disaster, there was a huge, powerful release of radioactive substances, and the city was recognized as dangerous. Many people had to be evacuated from there. Dad said that people thought that all this was temporary, and soon they would go back to their homes, which had to be abandoned as a matter of urgency, as well as their belongings, but unfortunately, no one ever returned. And now, more than 30 years have passed, and my fanatical geologist father was still working on some project that he never told my mother and me about. One day, he came home from work and told my mother and I to pack our things. to our questioning look, he only replied that we are moving to Chernobyl. I didn't want this, and neither did my mother, but we both didn't dare say something in spite of my father, because he was a very strict man. Personally, I was always afraid of him. I don't know about my mother. I loved our little house because that's where I was born and raised. I had friends at school and on the street. I liked to go to school, come home after school, eat something delicious, and run outside. I usually did my homework with my mother in the evenings. We hardly saw my father because he was always busy at work. Well, my mother and I were fine with that. When he was at home, we felt tense. I was even afraid to leave the room. In general, my dad is not bad, just did not communicate much with us, and often scolded me or did not pay any attention to me at all. That is why, when he said we were moving, my mother and I kept our indignation and protests to ourselves. Mom silently got up and went to pack her things, and I went to get mine. We left the next morning and took few suitcases with us. We arrived at the place in 3 to 4 days, and it was a terrible road. My father was silent all the way, and my mother and I didn't really talk. We were allowed in with special passes. When we arrived at the place, a sad picture opened up in front of me. In this city, in my city, there were much fewer people. Yes, people still lived there, and there are even working shops, but most of the territory is empty. The houses are very old and ugly. Many of the courtyards have long been overgrown with grass. I was afraid to enter the city. What if we get infected with radiation there? And then what happens? Will I start glowing at night? Or what if I grow a third hand? But my father said it was important to his work, so it wasn't discussed. We were given an apartment in an even more depressing area, where there were no children, no playgrounds, not really anything at all. We went to the apartment and nothing seemed to have changed since the accident. I wanted to cry. My mother and I were left to clean up and sort things out, and my father said it was necessary for him to leave, without even saying where. We scrubbed the apartment for about 4 or 5 hours. All this time, my mother asked me how I was feeling. She was worried about me, but I didn't want to upset her, so I said that everything was fine. In the evening, after dinner, my mother and I decided to take a walk around the area. When we went outside, we saw 2 people. They were also going somewhere. They looked at us and passed us, guns in their hands. It's probably normal to go armed here. After walking around the courtyard, we found a lot of interesting toys and even equipment on the ground. I really wanted to touch something or take it for myself, but my mother wouldn't let me. I asked what would happen to us now, but she said she hoped for the best. Then I saw the children's slides and I wanted a ride. I sat down and went down. I was having fun. The third time, I suddenly heard a terrible roar, and a dog was running at me. She barked and growled horribly, looked at me, and foamed at the mouth. I was going down the hill right into her mouth, and I couldn't slow down. At that moment, my mother rushed towards us, but she was too far away. I already thought I'd lose my head. Suddenly, there was a shot in the air. When I opened my eyes, I saw that the dog was lying dead, and not far away were those men with guns who passed us. This isn't an amusement park. We advise you not to leave the house, but rather to go far away and forever, they told us. My mother grabbed my arm. I thanked them and we ran home. In the evening, my mother began to cry, saying that we would not live like this for long. When my father came home, she first raised the question of whether to leave. Dad didn't like it. He got so tense right away, and I jumped in. I told him that I was almost eaten by a dog, so my father stopped talking and then told us to keep our heads down and go to bed. At this point, I realized that this is for a long time, so I decided to adapt and find ways to survive here. First of all, my mother and I sealed up all the windows, hung a cloth behind them so that no one could see anything, and put tools for self-defense at the entrance because stray dogs sometimes broke into apartments. Dad said we won't be here for long, but we'll have to stay for a while. A week later, I wanted to go to the station where the explosion took place. That day, my mother also went on business with my father. I didn't want to stay at home, especially since I lived here. Why not see the station with my own eyes? I gathered some warm clothes and went there on the map. It turns out that it was not so easy to get through, since there were security guards and some tourists. But I still managed to get as close as possible in a roundabout way. I took a few photos as a keepsake, and then I saw an interesting doll. She was so beautiful, I wanted to keep her. But security noticed me. They called to me, and I got scared and started running. They quickly caught up with me and began to take away the camera. I resisted, but they were stronger. I was taken to a building and left in an office. It was like an interrogation that I didn't know how to answer. In the end, they shook my mother's phone off of me and called her. My parents were already at home, and my mother was hysterical from not knowing where I was. Anyway, she and Dad came to pick me up, and my dad was so angry. I realized that at home, I would be scolded. "You will leave tomorrow," he said at home. We couldn't believe our ears. I was so happy, and Dad said it was a mistake to bring us along. He added that he thought we were interested in his work, but this was not the case. To be honest, I didn't care, so I just went and started packing. We left the next day, and Dad still stayed. All I knew was that I would never go back there again. Would you like to visit Chernobyl?